New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good afternoon and welcome to Finding the Joy in the Journey. I'm Rev Gina and so blessed to be here with you today here on New Thought Media Network. I am also blessed to be the senior minister at CSL Greater Boston, and we are here on Sundays at 5 with our Sunday service, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on New Thought Media Network. So we would love for you to join us. But here on Finding the Joy in the Journey today, I have a phenomenal guest. And before I introduce him, I want to just tell you a little bit about what we're all about here. This show, Finding the Joy in the Journey, is to experience the joy in life now. Too often we go through life waiting for something to happen. Well, when I get the right job, when I meet the right person, when I paid off my debt, then I'll be happy. When I take the right vacation, it's not about a destination. It's about being right here, right now, and understanding that everything and anything that we need is provided, but it comes from the inside out. Finding the joy in the journey is about speaking to different people that help us understand how they experience joy and how they bring more joy into their lives, so that we may experience it right where we are. Too often in this society of bigger, better, faster, more, it's about destination happiness, not that understanding that we were born with and as joy, love, peace, and all the good stuff. So let's experience that now. And who better to do that with than Rev Dr David Ault. He's an amazing person that does so much. For over 30 years, Reverend David has been a prophetic voice in the human potential movement as an unwavering crusader for mindfulness, global literacy, and social justice. Whether through teaching, evolutionary coaching, keynote presentations, David's singular intention has always been bridging our collective forgetfulness into the great collective reawakening. As an award-winning author, leadership coach, and global education advocate, he loves leading through example and abides by the motto that people would rather see a lesson than hear a lesson. You know, it's an amazing gift that he brings to the world as a minister, as a singer, as an author, as a coach, mentor, teacher, keynote speaker. He has podcasts and classes. He's an amazing storyteller and even a philanthropist, as he's begun an amazing nonprofit that's been 18 years. And in those 18 years has served over 5,000 children with over $2 million worth of donations in 4 different countries. So yes, this is a man who moves mountains in amazing ways, and I'm so grateful to have you here today. Welcome, Reverend Dr. David Ault.
Thank you so much. My microphone's working now. Yay. Just so you know, everybody at home, Gina and I were doing little hair discussions, and I've got a little thing going. So
all is well.
She was kind enough to let me stay on the show anyway.
I told him it was perfect. He's absolutely perfect. Hello to Wayne from Calgary, and we have somebody near DC. Thank you for being here. We don't know who you are, but we're glad you're here. You can always log into.
It's my friend, Facebook user. I love Facebook user.
So we are live, and anyone that has questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really, really good. Good. There are many factors that work in harmony for us to be able to answer that with integrity, but things are good. Yeah. I'm glad spring is on the mend. I know you live in the Boston area and I'm here in Atlanta. It's been a rough winter, and I know so many people that are affected. Their interior world is affected by the darkness and all of that seasonal kinds of things. And there's always, spring does bring a little bit of a hope when
I live in New England, and I can't decide between fall and spring. I love them both equally for different reasons. Fall, the color is just it is literally a spirit's paintbrush. But then spring, when things come alive again, and the ground and everything starts the rebirth of it all. I love it all. So I can't.
We are kindred spirits in that way. That's right.
I can't choose, so I don't. I just love them both. Yeah. But we've been very fortunate here in New England, at least in Rhode Island. Today it is 67 degrees. In the middle of February, it is 67 degrees. And I know there's things that might, I just choose to enjoy it. I don't want to know the ties of it. I am just grateful that we've actually had a very mild winter, and I am praying that we keep it that way. So I'll take all the gifts I get.
Good.
So you've got some amazing things happening as always. And I know you just finished up a class, January. You actually had a bunch of small pod classes going.
Yeah.
You taught the same book. It was Atomic Habits, right?
Habits, yeah. Well, January to me is one of the best opportunities as a teacher, because, as you can imagine, everybody has this greater sense of hope and self-compassion to hit the reset button. I mean, I know it's a human calendar, it's by human design, but within the framework of that, we do give ourselves so much more of a break to hit that reset button in January. And I always joke and I say, well, why don't we do that in March 19th or August 23rd? But so it's like catch the people when they're willing. And so I did something that was along the lines of Lynn McTaggart's The Power of 8. And I thought, how many groups of 8 can I get? And how can I spread the time zones out? And what we did was instead of doing the regular kind of goal-oriented thing, to take 2 seminal questions from this incredible book called Atomic Habits. And it was, number 1 is, instead of goals, it's focus on what type of person you want to be. Completely different approach with taking the opportunity of a new year. What kind of person do you want to be? And then second, what are the little 1% adjustments that you might be willing to make within your routine that would be in harmony with or in integrity with that type of person? And it really was a deeply effective line of questioning for myself. And I thought, well, gosh, let's do it for others. And it was really powerful. It was a really powerful thing.
It's so important. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. It's
Exactly.
important that
Yeah.
if that's what makes people think, okay, now's the time, that's great. It's it's the intention behind it and being in that place of new beginning. I think birthdays are another one of those times
Yeah.
that we each have that, okay, well, I'm coming up on 50 this year. So it's one of those, especially when you have those milestones, you think to yourself, okay, so what do I do now? And then, I don't personally have any attachment to, like, I'm not worried about it. To me, it's a gift. Every day, every year is a gift. My sister transitioned at 37. And it gave me the gift of understanding how precious every day is. So I don't have that worry about getting older. It's a gift to get older.
Right.
And when we realize that, it's just a question, okay, so like you said, what do I choose to show up as? Am I doing what I'm here to do? Am I living that purpose? And when I do, it feels good. And when I don't, it doesn't. So it's choosing, so I appreciate that concept of really, the 1%, because we don't have to drastically change everything to make a difference. We just
here's where that offering came from, because the author told a story, and it's worth sharing, about the British cycling team. I don't know anything about cycling, but he said that they were a global joke and had been a global joke for more than 100 years. And he's hired to be the manager coach. And he's, I guess, obviously cut from a different cloth. And so he was a big advocate of these little atomic microscopic adjustments, everything from painting the locker room a different color so that it would show dust, which could inhibit the breathing capacity of the riders, changing the fabric in their uniform so that it had more breathability, scoping out all types of deep tissue therapeutic massage that would amplify the healing process of all of the riders. I mean, the list was phenomenal. And you kind of laugh when you see the scope of the list, because you think, what difference would that make? But this man's was a genius, because he realized that each of those little 1% shifts had a cumulative effect. And lo and behold, if the whole scope of that list of things that he didn't begin to not only create more harmony within the team, they went in and started to win the Tour de France. They won, swept all Olympic medals for the first time in 100 years. And I remember reading that story going, wow, isn't that something? Then that's a visionary. We talk about visionaries, people that
outside
have a
the
vision.
box. It's about doing something different. If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah.
But we think of the something changing having to be hard. And one of the things we know in religious science is, what if it was easy? If I think it's going to be difficult, it's going to be. Right. But if I claim and know that there's these things, these external things are going to make a difference, then it starts to make an internal difference in me. So whether or not they actually worked had nothing to do with whether or not they worked, because the cyclists believed that they worked. Yeah. There were these changes, so therefore something's changed.
And it brings, just people can handle atomic shifts, little 1% granular shifts. They can handle that, and not only handle it, but it gives them some hope. Yes. And, I don't know about you, but after that class, really what was revealed was just a generalized kind of despair among people that often could wear that well, and now they're not able to wear it so well. And, it was a great cathartic way to be able to be honest, and yet at the same time go, I can do something about this, just even in a small way. And I know that people are hurting, and I know that they not only, I guess I would say they need that, but they're hungry for something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
In a lot of ways,
Yeah.
we teach, we live from the inside out, but we don't always practice in our daily life because there's so many distractions. It's so easy to get derailed from that when you see an earthquake and the destruction, when you see people attacking each other over political views, when you see seeming separation, it's so easy to get distracted. And we know truth, but we're not always living it. So when we get to go deeper and remind ourselves, it shines the light on what we choose to change within us.
And I would say that you say we know truth. I would say we have an intellectual framework of what we think truth is. And to know it is a whole next level. That's when you've gone into the valley of the shadow of death and you have come out on the other side. And so then that knowing comes from application and embodiment and experience.
Yes.
And I see so often that many of us try to prevent that. We try to make the intellect be the end all be all. And when we publicly and privately pray, use me, I surrender this vessel, this vehicle of an identity to that which knows far greater than me. And I then make myself available. It really is unprecedented what something like that will do, a pure intent will do, because it does lift us out of the intellect of a page of a book and put us boots to the ground in experiences that really do stretch and chip away and dissolve, and worldviews collapse and all of that kind of stuff. And
it's not always comfortable.
And that's where I see people who I admire them greatly, who are willing to go on that journey.
And it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable sometimes, but it is so worthwhile. That the inner work.
Yeah.
And it's not sometimes the word work isn't really, it's not the best word for it, but it's not always easy, but it's so worthwhile. It really is. And speaking on that, you have I want to make sure I mention your new class. Oh. It's going to be starting March 6th. Yeah. So putting that out there for people that they can go to your website and sign up, because there are still spots available. And that is davidault.com. They can reach out and they can sign up. And it is revisioning, using the imagination to heal. It looks wonderful. There's 2 different sessions. This is Eastern time, 9, because you're in Atlanta. You're in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's 9:30 a.m. or 7:30 p.m. are the 2 sessions that are available. And it's revisioning, using the imagination to heal. So if you can tell me a little bit about that.
I first saw the word revisioning when I was reading material by Neville Goddard. I don't know if you're familiar with Neville Goddard or not. One of my favorite 20th century metaphysical teachers, writers, very prolific. His whole scope was about the imagination, and almost exclusively. And when you talk about the imagination, you talk about the boundlessness of that. You talk about the unlimited nature of it. And when you combine the understanding of that with the potentiality of thought as energy, so then what you use that energy in the boundless scope of the imagination can become the canvas by which we create. And he used this word revision, and he used it sort of as a throwaway, because he was talking about a woman gets a letter, the letter's disappointing, she wants So he instructs her to take the contents of the letter within her imagination and shift it in a way that it brings about a different response mechanism inside of her. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And I couldn't let that idea go. And probably about eight or 9 years ago, I started to look at that more and develop a list of criteria on my understanding, or what I feel would be potent for something like that. And I kept coming up with the idea of the phrase that we often say, what's done is done. And I went, no, there's no truth to that. What's done is just a colloquialism that really doesn't have any metaphysical basis to it. Because if there is no such thing as time, and time is illusory or it's unilateral or whatever, then whatever that wounding was, that issue was, that pain was, that from a quantum thing is still happening. And so what if we, in our imagination, went back to that moment and changed our response? And then I thought, well, wow, I've got to have some rules around this. So the number one rule was that regardless of what that event was, can you still be grateful for that event in present day? Because if you can't, then that's going to affect the nature by which you approach the exercise. Can you look back and see that whatever happened still act as a progressive propellant to get you to where you are today? Can you at least have a shred of gratitude? Once that established, then the other big piece was you can't change the free will of another person. So if the event evolved someone else, if they died, abandoned you, if they hurt you, you can't change their action. So the exercise is really about our response. And to do that then meant to be open and willing to revisit that and revision that moment, and play then, create a sense of malleability with it, in order to see that by doing that, you're actually affecting the quality of life in present day. Because what we don't realize is that we're run by our themes. I call them themes. And so, like a shared theme that we all have is, if I want something done right, I have to do it myself. That's a theme. There's no truth to that. Mm-hmm. However, because we share that, and because we all have variable control issues and whatever, the most qualified people can be right in front of us. Highly skilled people can be right here in front of us, and we can't see them or notice their skill or appreciation because the theme of I have to do it is so strong and so overpowering that we dismiss everything that's in front of us that would help negate that theme. And so when you start to think about the voluminous amount of themes that we're walking around with, I'm unlovable. And so
money doesn't grow on trees.
Money doesn't grow on trees. So these themes, when you start to see that, many of them have their genesis in these moments where we could practice revisioning. And so when you see the way in which it all works together, it's really a powerful exercise. And I got really into this. And for several years, I did many classes and I did workshops on I did a whole ministers conference on this at Unity Village once. And I have over 300 and something case studies where people went back to a particular memory. And when they began to play with that memory, they went, oh my God, that's where that came from. Mm-hmm. It was just like that ministers conference. One time a minister, we did some things throughout the first day. And then the night's homework was whatever memory comes up, don't judge it, just pick that one and take it to bed with you and just begin to see how you might approach your response differently. And the next morning I asked if there were any takers in terms of what came up, and this woman raised her hand. She goes, I'm the biggest control freak, self-admitted. She goes, she's a minister. She goes, I show up at church. I'm the one that has to turn all the lights on. I'm the one who has to clean the toilets. I'm the, and it's not that there aren't other people to do that. She goes, it's just, ugh. And she said, my sister and I are a year apart, and our mother was really young when she had us. She was like barely 20. And so when I was 8 and my sister was 7, my mother was still a young woman, single, wanted to party. She would put us to bed and she would get in her car on the weekends and go out. And she said, the way our beds were positioned, I could see the street lamp outside from my bed, and I could see her pull out of the driveway. And she goes, I don't know what propelled me, but I would sit up in bed and I would wait till she came back. She might come back at 3, 4 in the morning, but I took it upon myself as my duty, my guardian of my baby sister, to sit there and wait until she came back. And she says, I feel like that has a lot to do with my over responsibilitizing. And I said, okay. And I said, so in the practice of shifting things, I said, what came up for you? She goes, oh, I could see my bed. I could feel the pajamas that we wore. I could see it all. And I said, and what did you do? And she said, I saw my mother pull out of the driveway. And then I just laid down and went to sleep. And everybody laughed. But it was powerful when you think about it. And I said, so it's not a one and done thing. You get to keep going back to that moment and taking that rest and that decision and that peace and making it more integrated and deeper. And that's just a tiny example. And of course, people have all kinds of situations and traumas and abuse and things that require a lot of nuance and a lot of skill to be able to navigate those things. However, the exercise itself can lead to a lot of breakthrough. That was a long-winded explanation of that class, but you can tell I'm kind of excited about that work.
No, it's wonderful. And it's also what's important too is remembering that we are not victims. We are powerful creators. So we don't realize that our mind is keeping us at where she was at 8 years old. She still felt responsible. When we can come to a place of understanding that, okay, this may have been the start of it, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
And now neutralize what used to be, almost like a bookend. We don't have to stay there anymore. We don't have to stay stuck. It doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter what happened to us when we become the creator and not the victim. There's a shift. And there's so many wonderful tools that we have, especially in our practices, to do that. So I think it's important that we remember that we are these infinite creators with infinite potential. And it's so easy to forget that. And you have a Sunday message that I want to mention called The Gathering, that people can reach it through your website, again, davidault.com, or they can go to YouTube and find your YouTube station. And you are live at noon East Coast time every Sunday. And it's about 20 minutes, half hour is the message. And it's always different topics. And they're always wonderful, of course. And there was one in particular that I loved, and it was called Willing to Be Willing. And, sometimes you're in the right place at the right time when you needed to hear something. And that was one of those days for me. So, where do your topics come from? Where did that come from?
I think my favorite part of having been a platform minister for decades and filming these things weekly is to pay attention during the week to see what wants to be said or what wants to be birthed or explored. And that level of co-creation is a lot of fun for me. And so that process can sometimes wait till the last minute to reveal what wants to be said, or other times I've noticed a recurring theme throughout the week and I go, okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. So there's a little bit of a variety in the way in which I arrive at what wants to be said. Many times it's from the one-on-one work that I do with people, and somebody will, share something, and that something will be the kind of the kernel of a bigger topic that I will want to talk about. So what do you remember what it was within that one? Willing to be willing?
There's so much in that topic to me, and it goes very deep, and it's one of those things that sometimes willingness, I say I'm willing, but there's parts of me that are still holding back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when it comes to spirit, I don't have to do it all. I have to be willing to be willing, and spirit will take the rest. I don't have to be the water that flows. I just have to get in the river.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's so much hope that we can really get from different places. And I think it's so important to remember that when we lean in towards the sun, we feel the warmth. We don't have to go there. We don't have to go to outer space to feel it. We just have to lean in. And I think sometimes I know I can make too much of it.
Mm.
And I think it's important. And I think that your topics are very, I love you're such a storyteller, and it's all about how people won't remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Mm.
And that's what you have a gift of doing. And I'm grateful for that. So I really appreciate the topics that you pick and how you walk us through them, just like you did in that example, because it explains it in a way that I understand.
Yeah.
And I'll remember.
And those, another way that we would talk about things like that, the writer Carolyn Mace called them 6-second moments. That's always been a really potent teaching tool as well, because people can, and she says something that literally could have taken 6 seconds still governs the way we see ourselves and our world, just from that little offhanded comment, verbalized opinion, whatever. And whether we call it a theme or whether it's a 6-second moment, it's all the same. It's just this accumulation of thought. And it's been very delicate of late, and required a lot of nuance and hyper listening to be with people who are going through some advanced depression. And so I'm very fortunate that I have an amazing partner who's on his spiritual path, and we purposefully get up extra early in the morning because we sit with our coffee and we sit in this chair and we talk about big things. and these discussions, they go deep. And his path is more of the bhakti yoga Hindu path. And but we share an affinity and a love for Ram Dass, and he was a student of Ram Dass, when Ram Dass was still alive. And so he traveled a lot in those last 6 years of his life to Maui to work with him. And he had what's called a samadhi experience, where he had an extended awareness of the one. A mystical experience that didn't just kind of float in, but it anchored itself in him from his work there, having some things happen, being, facilitated with great care and great power by people who have a lot of skill. And it lasted for over a year. He lived in a state of samadhi. He works for the government. He is mired in bureaucracy, went through a painful divorce, has two girls who, that was a whole nother journey to have to manage. And even in the midst of all of that, in that state of samadhi, he was able to stay connected. And we were talking about that, and I said, I've had that, but it sure didn't last a year. And it came from a lot of very painful, deep shamanistic work with some people, and we were talking about that though, and what he said just moved me. He said, when I was in that state, he said, it was so clear. I could see that you and I, all of us, have a zillion thoughts a day. I mean, it was like a sea of noise. And he said, I could sit and I could witness all of it and not grab onto any of it. Mm. And that's what sustained it. And what's brilliant about that, and what I don't think people understand, is that when we talk about being the witness of the thought, we're not even talking about changing your thoughts. We're talking about just witnessing them, right? And not identifying with them and looking at them, as we've heard before, as if they're just clouds. And really the only relationship is to that all-encompassing energy of love, which still lets you go into the grocery store, which still lets you sit down with your daughter and tell her she can't do that, which which still has to do all of the bill paying, and it doesn't dissipate, but you're just witnessing it. And what we notice now, that has been a little bit of the past, and we're seeing a lot of our friends and people in pain. It's just that, Gina. It's just that. It's grabbing the thought, even if it's done from a pure intent where I want to fix it. Even that is different than just witnessing it and letting it be. And people confuse that with not doing anything. It's not that at all. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the paradox of that. That means then that you and I, Michael Beckwith always said, I was telling somebody I was working with this morning, the pain's going to keep pushing you. It's going to keep pushing you until the vision is allowed to pull you. You can't force the vision to pull you. You have to give it permission to pull you. And so with that, we become we become so tempted to hold the thoughts in a very sacred place, that to make those thoughts sacrosanct, so much so that we're willing to create and call other people names who don't do it the way that we want to do it. And so this whole thing about bypassing, to just be the witness, there are people then who will jump on that and scream bypassing. And there's nothing that you can do.
Well, there's a difference between.
There's a difference.
But
it gets muddied. It gets muddied, and then it gets kind of sterilized and homogenized to think that it's everything about that. But it's not about not being involved. It's the paradox of being able to just witness all of that and be boots to the ground involved.
Not everything's mine to do.
And it's not. And still, it's looking at the thoughts. So let's say my zillion thoughts, there are ones that really want to grab at me. And we were having that talk because I was being grabbed by a lot of my thoughts, and I was I was feeling the weight of not just the people that I've been working with, but my own weight as well. And it's like when he said that, I went, yeah, you're right. I'm wanting to make them special.
In it, but not of it.
Yep.
You know, being the witness is simply like, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So, you know, there's a radio and there's a lot of stations on the radio, and I don't have to listen to them all. I can only tune into one at a time, and I can choose which one.
And he, you know, he said to me, he said, I had to be, who do I say this aloud? He said, you know, with regards to his path and depression, he said, I had to be so fiercely devoted to not grabbing that thought.
Yes.
And that is not a condemnation in any way to people who are struggling with that. But it was
Everyone's struggling with something.
It was his decision, you know, and I said, you know, more power to you, because there are things that he now grabs onto that I don't. And that's why we all are eating from the same pie, but we're just in a different piece.
Because there's only one. So it's a question of how are we, and there's different tools that help different people. There's different language, there's different people, there's so many different ways, and they're all wonderful. So it's finding the way that works for each one. And
that's, you know, what I think is exciting about being a teacher.
Yes.
And a minister is
exactly seeing something that in that moment someone got something that you said, and you were able to help the light shine a little bit, help somebody lean in a little bit in a different way.
It means that you and I have to be, you know, open at the top, but we have to be teachable in teaching.
And aware on different levels.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a gift, and it's an interesting path. But as time is flying by, I definitely want to mention, and I want to play, you have a new song, you and Karen Drucker. And the first time that I interviewed you, I asked you about your music, because you had been in music for, is it 20, 30 years?
20, 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you said, nope, it just stopped. And it was just an interesting thing. And the next thing I know, you have this beautiful song with your friend Karen Drucker. So tell me how it happened.
Oh my God, it's so funny. So years ago, I'm gonna say it must have been about 23 years ago. I flew to Northern California, where she lived, and she was the music director at the Golden Gate Center. And as was the weekly routine, the minister would call her up and say, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about, write a chant. And so usually on Saturday night or Sunday morning, Karen would be creating a chant to go with that particular talk. And I was going to be the speaker that week. And so I stayed with her because we've been friends for a long time. And we went on a hike and we were talking, and that song started 23 years ago. And I said, well, and then we sat down at the piano and we came up with a little thing, and then we never did anything with it. And we would talk about it from time to time over the years. And then something during the pandemic on this network, on the New Thought Media Network, we had a concert. And I said, let's pull that out and play with it. And so from that, I got in touch with the person that I recorded all of my catalog, and when I was in Alliance with Louise Hay, and he created the track. I went back to Northern California and saw Karen. I was facilitating a wedding out there, and we went into her husband's studio and we laid down the vocals, and there you have it. 23 years in the making.
Well, I'm going to play it because I love it.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll chat about it a little on the other side.
All right.
Okay. This is I Honor It All.
darkness and the light.
I honor it all, every season of my life.
I honor it all.
I honor it all. I honor it all, every feeling that I feel.
I honor it all, things imagined and things real.
I honor the pain that caused my knees to kneel.
I honor it all.
I honor it all. Whatever it was that caused me so much fear,
Whatever the struggle I carried through my years,
whomever it was behind the bitter tears,
I honor it all.
I honor it all. I honor it all, every season of my life. I honor it all, the darkness and the light.
I honor it all, every season of my life. I honor it all.
I honor it all.
I honor it all. I honor it all.
I honor it all.
Love it. I absolutely love it.
It did come out nice, didn't it? Yeah.
It's beautiful, and it's a wonderful self-care, self-honoring song. And I think that's so important because it's so easy to get caught up in would have, could have, should have, already done. And, we all have things in our lives that, I wish I'd already gotten to that, or shouldn't I have already? And,
yeah.
this is, or things that we seemingly regret. And every bit of it, that this song reminds us that there's a place for it.
Many people who may have followed me over the years know that Louise Hay was kind of my second mom, and in the heyday when we would tour, if we were using a van and driving, we always sat together. And I was still an actor at the time and trying to juggle that career and with so many disappointments. And it was many times when I would crawl into the van having gotten bad news from my agent, or I didn't get what I want. And I would whine and complain a lot about things when you're 20. And she always said to me, you need to learn how to honor the entirety of your journey. And I kind of got it back then, but I didn't fully appreciate the legacy and the impact and the power of that wisdom, that gift, until, of course, life had to happen. And I saw that there were many times where I would get seduced into, oh, if that just hadn't happened to me, this would be better. And she was like saying, no, it's all adding up exactly meticulously to what needs to happen for you. So
We each have a path, and sometimes the no's are more sacred than the yeses.
very well put. Yes. Yes.
If we always got what we think we wanted,
Oh my God.
it's interesting. I know for me, it is the most difficult times that have made me who I am. And that's why I'm a minister. That's why I'm, am where I am and who I am. It wouldn't change that for anything. But when you're in the midst of it, it doesn't feel like that.
Not at all.
And that's when this is on that playlist of mine. That is when you have those difficult times. I think it's very important to have a playlist for all different moods. And especially
that's what's missing. I don't have a playlist.
Playlist. I can send you mine. I'll do a screenshot.
Please do. Yeah.
My playlist. and it's one of hope. It's one of power. It's reminding me who I am. I truly believe that everybody should have their own theme song. One song that reminds you. I'm not going to lie. I got this from Ally McBeal. But everybody should have their own theme song that when you forget, when you're in that place of feeling powerless, it reminds you that you're powerful, who you really are. And you play that song and it reminds you and you're filled up again.
That's great wisdom. I'm gonna use that. Thank you.
You have to find your own theme song. What would your theme song be?
Oh God, I don't know.
Mine is This Little Light of Mine.
There you go. Okay.
So everybody should have their own theme song. And it really, it reminds me. And I've used this with people that I ran a program of people that had a lot of physical, mental, seeming dis-ease. And there were barriers to employment, and they told themselves that they couldn't do anything. And in the matter of a month, they felt completely powerful and able.
Wow. And
that was music was part of that, because when we hear it, when we really listen to the lyrics, there's power in that.
Yeah.
It's a reminder, there's stories. Each one is a story. And I think that this song is a powerful story and reminder that there's a reason that these things happen. And it's important to honor ourselves, especially the tough days.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping this program going, because you're really good at this.
No, I'm blushing. Thank you.
You are. You're really good at. You're really skilled, and this is a valuable tool that people need.
It's so important we remember that we get to enjoy any moment we choose. We can think about things that made us happy or things that made us sad. We can think about anything we choose. And then sometimes we're not going to be happy. It's okay not to be okay. It's just not okay to stay there.
That's the paradox too. It's like once you know that it doesn't have deep roots, then you can hold if you want to call it hope or knowing, you can hold that simultaneously with the pain and let it work together in order to say, I don't have to move away. I don't have to look away. I can let it do what it needs to do. And the key word, and I can still know that there is a perfect patterning going on.
Yes.
People, again, like you read in my bio, it was people would rather see a sermon than hear one. They would rather see someone exemplify what they're longing and feel their own internal permission rather than just continue to hear about it. And I think that that's what makes any of us live in integrity and maximize the gift that we've been given to be a teacher. It's like, I'm going to live full out in front of you.
Yes. Life is in Technicolor, good, bad, or indifferent. Some days it's easier than others, and that's
oh my
part
God.
of it. The joy is in the journey. It really is. It's not about a one-time thing happening. It's about experiences, and
Mhm.
you never get this day again. So, it's really being mindful of that. So I want to mention, for those of you that haven't bought your ticket yet, that you will be at Vista next week. You see
I
us
will.
convention.
Yeah.
You're going to be in Dallas on Thursday. Very excited. I will be watching you and enjoying. I know. I'm so excited for that. Again, it's Thursday for the Vista conference. And I also want to mention your Kaleidoscope Foundation. And we've mentioned it in the past, and there's more detail in past episodes. Of course, you can go back and watch those. We would love you to do that, but at least go to the website and find out more about it. Kaleidoscope and Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. And again, over $2 million raised, over 5,000 children helped. And it's in Cambodia, Guatemala, and India, and the United States. And it is an amazing program that for the past 18 years helps people to have drinking water, food, to be able to be taught, for children to have an education, to change lives. So,
and we did a little thing in Africa last year too with
wow.
with the CSL Kenya. There's members of that particular group. One woman and her husband run a school, and we had wanted to do something in Africa last year. In fact, we had budgeted and set aside a grant that we wanted to initiate through a former board member, and it didn't happen. I was in Geneva, Switzerland for the CSL conference there, and there was this teacher from Kenya. And we're like sitting there talking, and I went, "Oh my God, here's our Africa."
And what if it was easy?
Here's our Africa connection.
What
and
if it was
it
easy?
was so brilliant, and she was so so deserving and grateful, and it was just so cool to be able to see that intention unfold like that. So yeah, we did Africa as well.
So it's, there's so many gifts and just amazing things that you are involved in. The Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, whether it's a one-time donation or a monthly donation, it is a wonderful gift that you've brought to the world, and I am grateful for it. And I want people to remember that you have the class that's going to be starting on March 6th. Again, 9:30 a.m. or 7:30 p.m. There are spots available for both of them, at least for now.
Mm-hmm.
And revisioning, using the imagination to heal. So I encourage people to get on that as well. And I thank you for being here and being so gracious with your time, as
Thanks
always.
for asking.
It is a gift. There's so much that you continue to do in the world. And, sometimes we think, or it's told to us, what can I really do? What can one person do to change the world? You are an amazing example of showing how much one person can change the world, because you don't stop. You see a vision, you do the next thing, and you do the next thing, and and you've been, you had a music career, and you have books published, and you're working on your third, and you've got all of these things that you've done and you continue to do. And it is an inspiration for me and for many of us, because you know what? We don't have to sacrifice what we're doing or love to be who we're meant to be. It comes out in amazing ways, and you're a great example of living in that joyful journey. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gina. Thanks for inviting me. And again, as long as this works for you, keep doing this, because you're so skilled at this. It's like it's a natural gift.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I have one announcement that I want to mention.
Yeah.
We have a wonderful person today leading CSL Greater Boston. Where the topic tonight for our Sacred Circle at 7 is we're all just walking each other home by Ram Dass. That is actually the topic for this evening's conversation. It is always at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and it's every Thursday. It's different spiritual leaders, different topics every week, and it's always wonderful. So join us. I would love to have, and I'm looking forward to having you come and join us some Thursday.
That'd be great.
And thank you to all of you for being here with us. Remember that it's up to you to find the joy in the journey. It's there.
And how can they support you in this network?
Well, the network itself is amazing, and it is, we are here because of people that allow that to happen. So it's ntmedia.org, and I will also play that on the way out. But
Yeah.
It's important to know that ntmedia.org, you can click donate, and people can actually reach out to me as well, as far as by email, gina@cslboston.org, or find me on Facebook, as well as like CSL Boston on Facebook as well. Thank you. And have a wonderful day and week, and know that the joy is there, and it's about you embracing it. May you find it today, right now. Blessings and love. Namaste.
Namaste.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network.